on a mountain in Vermont in 1905, Bill Wilson's father, is speaking to his son, the 9-year-old Billy, while sipping a bottle.
Billy, look up at that sky. At those stars, millions and millions of miles away. They were there long before we were, and they will be long afterward. There's all the beauty and the mystery of the universe. Just look up. Let it sink in.
I'll never forget that night. When we came down from the mountain, the wagon took us back to the house. I didn't know it at the time, but that was goodbye. I didn't see him again for 10 years, and I didn't have much to say then. My parents were very different. My father was easygoing, a natural leader. He was a foreman in one of the marble quarries that were the main industry in East Dorset. They worked the vein until it gave out and almost everyone turned to farming. My dad's crew provided the marble for the New York Public Library and the Soldiers and Sailors Monument on Riverside Drive. He was both responsible and irresponsible. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he sure drank a lot. He bought me my first gun, I still have it, and taught me all kinds of wood skills.
It was just awful when your father left.
Yeah. My mother was another story. Brilliant, determined, cold, almost always angry, and not at all social. She punished me a lot. I'll never forget the time she took me behind the shed and made me take down my pants and lay across her knee and spanked and spanked and then spanked my bare backside some more with a hairbrush. Don't remember what I did wrong, but she was in a rage.
And that must have really hurt.
I don't remember the pain. What I remember is feeling helpless and deeply, deeply humiliated by being exposed in front of her. Every time I felt shame, and I've had all too many experiences of shame, I remember being taken behind that shed.
And of course you felt ashamed. You had to pull down your pants in front of your mother.
Mom became a very successful osteopathic physician. It wasn't until I was middle-aged and she was verging on old age that I developed a more or less normal relationship with her. It was never warm.
For a while after the shed, things went well for you, Bill, especially when the lending library opened.
I owe my mom a lot for getting me into books. I never stopped reading.
Bill's mother, Emily, calls out to Bill and Dottie, his sister.
Come on, kids, we're going on a picnic at Dorset Pond. It's going to be wonderful.
A picnic? We never go on picnics. Something's wrong.
At Dorset Pond, Emily is laying out the sandwiches. She stops arranging the food.
I have something to tell you, kids. I'm going to study in Boston. Your father is not coming back. Your sister is coming with me. And you, Bill, will go live with your grandfather.
No, 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 you can't do it. Mom, please, no.
When they got home, Billy climbed a tree. He was burrowing in the crotch several limbs high up in the tree. And he refused to come down. Not even his grandfather, whom he always obeyed, could get Billy down.
Billy, get out of that tree.
I won't.
Come down.
I won't.
I said come down.
No.
Dan.
Was it hours before I left my refuge and returned to Earth, or days? I don't know.
Bill's mother and sister left. And then in 1905, no one in East Dorset, Vermont, had ever been divorced before. Nobody but Bill's parents.
You have no parents. They left you.
They're divorced. Your mom and dad don't want to live with you. Don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah, who gets divorced? You're only lowlifes and sinners. You have no parents.
I felt shame like I never felt before. And guilt. It was my fault. They wouldn't have divorced and left if it weren't for me.
Shame and guilt, the twin demons that pursued Bill all his life.
I didn't have a word for it, but I was in a deep depression. A kind of depression that's darkness visible. I collapsed and did nothing. It was a pattern that I would repeat many times.
Bill's grandparents were good people who loved him. His grandfather was in his 60s and didn't want to raise another child. His own son Clarence had died the year before of tuberculosis, and the idea of Bill replacing Clarence was repugnant. Gramps nevertheless managed to be good to Bill, buying him a chemistry set, taking him to see Buffalo Bill when the show came into town. His feelings towards Bill were real enough, but Billy could not replace Clarence. Grandpa never got over losing his son, and Bill could feel that. But then came a break in the gloom.
Billy, why don't you go upstairs? Look in the attic for Clarence's old violin. You just might be able to play it.
I did. It was battered and in awful shape, but I made a bridge for it, and I bought wires in the general store to use as strings and taught myself to play. Grandpa had an early Victrola, and I used to listen to Misha Elman and other great violinists, and I thought, maybe I can be that good. Well, that was crazy, of course. I was a very mediocre violinist. I was thrilled when I realized that Clarence's violin was actually playable as a result of my efforts. And not only that, I taught myself well enough that my playing actually sounded like music. I couldn't get over my own success. Eventually I played at country dances and people seemed to like it well enough. And books, always books. Like I told you, I got that from my mother, but I made it my own. And I had a knack with tools, which Grandpa encouraged.
Tools, books, and the Vermont woods got you through your childhood.
Yeah, without them I wouldn't be here.
A year or two later, Gramps showed Billy a picture in a book of an Australian boomerang and explained what it was and how it worked. By then, even though he was always in the background, the fact that Gramps still missed Clarence didn't get in the way so much.
As soon as I saw that boomerang, I knew I had to make one, even though I knew no American had ever done it. I tried all kinds of wood, all kinds of shape, used all the tools we had, but it never worked. I threw it out, and it always just hit the ground. Then one night, I was looking at my headboard, and it looked like the perfect wood for a boomerang. I got a saw, I cut out a boomerang from the head saw, and I managed to get it to work. It actually turned around and came back. I was thrilled. Thrilled beyond what I can tell you. And Grandpa was too. Since then, I've thrown many things into the universe. Some of them have come back, and some haven't.
And from then on, Bill had to win. He had to be first in everything he did. Underneath, however, was the exact opposite. He had a terror of family. But as a kid, he didn't know that.
I was very much alone. In school, I had competitors, but no friends. Looking back, in spite of the violin and the boomerang, it was pretty bleak. I'd never really gotten over that feeling of not belonging, being an outsider. I did have one friend, Mark, who was several years older and explained to me all about class differences. I didn't know what he was talking about. I guess he was reading political stuff. But then he explained, and it did make sense.
The summer people, Vermont was a summer resort by then. The Equinox Hotel in Manchester, just south of East Dorset, attracted rich people who came for the summer. Eventually, they built big houses along Main Street.
When I realized the summer people looked down on us, Mark's words registered. I'd never thought about any of that before, but now every time I saw expensively dressed women coming out of one of the mansions in Manchester, I cringed. There was no way they could ever have any time for me. And like I told you, the native kids, I was never really friends with them. Mark was more of a mentor than a friend, but we stayed close for decades. Eventually, he became the village postmaster and a well-known character in East Dorset. Good thing I had Grandpa.
Billy, it's the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. There's going to be a reunion of the men who fought that battle. and a memorial service for those who died there. I'm going. You want to come with me? I was there, you know.
Do I want to? I can't wait.
Vermont men died disproportionate to their numbers in the Civil War, especially at Gettysburg.
As Gramps and Bill walked around the battlefield, they sensed a bond between the survivors who were truly abandoned brothers. Even at that age, Bill knew it was ridiculous to want to be one of them, yet he yearned to have what he sensed they had.
Gettysburg touched me. It said something about America, especially about Vermont, that I still treasure.
Much Vermont blood was spilled stopping Pickett's charge. If it hadn't been stopped, a path would have opened for Lee to take Washington. The valor of those men saved the Union. Gramps had many friends among those dead, and easily could have been one of those dead. 2 generations earlier, Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys of Vermont took Fort Ticonderoga from the mightiest empire in the world, making possible America's experiment with democracy. Lincoln's words about America being the last best hope of mankind always brought tears to the eyes of Gramps and the Vermont veterans.
Then President Wilson came and gave a speech. I don't remember what he said. And then we left. I felt that I could never participate in such greatness or be a part of it. I took 2 things away from Gettysburg: a belief in the sacredness of American democracy and an envy of the closeness, that special bond between veterans.
Back at home, Bill felt the full force of the abandonment of both of his parents, and he sank into a deep, deep depression. It was Billy's grandfather who pulled Billy's mother back into contact with her son.
Billy, you can't just play the violin and throw your boomerang around all the time. I can't stand seeing you just sitting there, staring into space and doing nothing. I just don't know what to do with you, but this cannot go on.
We can't afford it, but we're sending you to the Burton Seminary.
For Bill, Burton Seminary in Manchester was another experience of being different, of not belonging. There were very few Vermonters at that school. Most of the kids were rich kids from Boston and New York and the Midwest. Once more, he didn't fit in, and he didn't connect.
But I did excel. I was going to be number 1, and within a year, I was. I was first violin of the school orchestra, I was captain of the baseball team, and I was head of my class. The snobby kids didn't exactly get to like me, but I think they respected me. Things were going unbelievably well. Then I fell in love. Rather unusual for those days, the school was co-ed, and Bertha Bamford was gorgeous, vivacious, charming, full of life, and I think she loved me. I was completely won over. I no longer cared about violins or boomerangs or anything else. All I cared about was finding ways to spend time with her. One day she told me she had to go to New York for an operation. It was nothing very serious, just some growth that had to be removed. I guess what they would call these days a benign tumor. And off she went. I missed her, but I wasn't all concerned.
Boys and girls, I have terrible news. Your classmate, Bertha Bamford, hemorrhaged during an operation in New York. The doctors couldn't stop the bleeding, and she died.
No. No!
This time it was really serious. From a leader in everything, he went to the bottom. He failed all his classes, stopped playing sports music or doing anything else. The family didn't know what to do. They withdrew him from school and saw Bill just mope around the house. Emily and Gramps decided another family conference was necessary.
We have to do something. Bill's 20 times as much trouble as Dolly. Always down. But I've never seen him this bad. I know it was terrible when that girl didn't make it, but it's time he snapped out of it.
Yes, it's worth a try. Let's enroll him at Norwich University.
Years later, Bill told his wife that he had his first sexual experience at age 13 at the Equinox Hotel. The odds of Bertha, later love, a healthy young girl from minor surgery, dying of minor surgery, was so unlikely that one can't help but wonder if her well-connected parents had arranged a therapeutic abortion that went south. There's no evidence to support that conjecture, but it would go a long way to explain the intensity of Bill's grief. Norwich was Vermont's military college. On the train to college, something uncanny happened to Bill.
My heart started pounding wildly. I couldn't catch my breath. I was sure I was dying. It went on and on.
And nobody knew about panic attacks in those days, but it was the first of many for Bill.
When I got to Norwich, I had lots of trips to the infirmary. Each time they would check me out, say nothing was wrong, and send me back to my dormitory. But something was very wrong. The sheer terror of those attacks still echoes in my mind. It was awful, just plain awful. And no one gave a damn.
Norwich University was nothing like Burton Seminary. Bill certainly wasn't functioning at his best. All the triumphs he had had at Burton, no matter how hard he tried, were never repeated.
I wasn't first violin, I didn't make the football team, I didn't make the baseball team. No matter what I tried, I failed. My grades were terrible, and naturally, I wasn't part of any clique. Alone, once more. By the summer, I was marginally better. Then a miracle happened. I met Lois. It was at Dorset Park.
Dorset Pond is Emerald Lake State Park now. The lake's deep, deep green is from the marble from the abandoned mines leaching into the water and from the beautiful green firs surrounding the lake.
Lois's family had a couple of camps on the lake, and she had a sailboat. We would sail back and forth through that glorious green in the often bright sun and dive into the luscious water. Lois was from a very different background. She was summer people, had grown up playing with Lincoln's grandchildren, his son having built a summer home in Manchester. Her father was a very well-to-do physician, and he not only had the camps on the lake, but a magnificent house in Manchester and a house in Brooklyn. My attraction to Lois had nothing to do with her social position or her worth. In fact, they were a barrier with my fear of rejection. But Lois didn't seem to care about any of that. Native or not, she was attracted to me. Lois saved me. She picked me up as the most tender of mothers would pick up an infant.
All his adult life, Bill found women, Lois in particular, to mother him, nurse him, take care of him, believe in him, and love him.
I didn't exactly come out of my depression, but Lois lifted me up a long way, almost back into something like normal. I was not the most desirable of suitors, and I knew it. Yet her family ignored the class differences between us and made me feel welcome. Perhaps they were starting to worry that Lois, 5 years older than I, might wind up as a spinster. Even if true, they genuinely liked me. It took a long, long time before I felt at ease in their home. In the fall, I went back to Norwich. My mother had dreams of me being an engineer and wanted me to take the entrance exam to MIT. I did, and failed them. I didn't do much better back at Norwich. I was barely passing when World War I broke out. The whole school was commissioned, and I became a lieutenant. Lois and I set a wedding date before I could be sent to war. Neither of my parents were at our wedding. We got married in the Swedenborgian church in Brooklyn. By then, the panic attacks had stopped, though they recurred many times in my later life.
Bill is leading his men in a drill on a New England base, and Lois is watching with rapt attention. Bill had signed up to serve in the safest assignment he could get, the artillery in a shore battery. After the drill, Bill and Lois are talking.
I'm so ashamed. I'm nothing but a coward.
Stop it. That's not true.
I couldn't stand the thought of being killed and leaving you, so I chose safety over defending the country I love. Lois, you don't know what it's like to be filled with shame. Not the kind of shame I feel.
Bill, you were magnificent on that parade ground. Your men adored you.
That doesn't make me any less of a coward. I can lead. I guess I got that from my father. Doesn't mean much. I know I can never live up to the heroism of the veterans at Gettysburg, including Grandpa.
But I would rather have you survive the war.
First Lieutenant Wilson was assigned to a base near Newport, Rhode Island. The owners of Newport's 50-room summer cottages felt it was their patriotic duty to entertain the officers. Bill was more terrified that he might use the wrong fork than he was at the thought of trench warfare. Lois's home, her father's plush house in Brooklyn, was overwhelming enough.
I don't have words for what I felt in that Newport mansion until a butler offered me a Bronx cocktail. Vermont was a dry state. Not that that stopped anyone from drinking, except me. I never drank. That Bronx cocktail was magical, transformative. My fears, my self-consciousness, my sense of inferiority, my tongue-tiedness all disappeared. I felt a part of things. It was absolute magic. From then on, I never passed an opportunity to drink. For the first time, I felt I was part of things. At ease, I spoke to men and women, joking, flirting. Oh, God, it was wonderful.
And you don't have to know much about pharmacology, biochemistry, or genetics to know that many of those who become alcoholics have Bill's reaction to their first drink. You might think it's not different from what alcohol does for everyone. It lowers inhibitions, it reduces anxiety, it reduces feelings of being part of the crowd. But that's not what happens to alcoholics. Bill experienced all of those things, but at a different level of magnitude. Psychologists would say that love of drink for someone prone to alcoholism is reinforced in a way that it is not for most folks. They long for that instant of euphoria, and they go on looking for it in a bottle, never finding it. Well, maybe finding it every 10th or 20th time, though it's never quite the same as the first. That random reinforcement at the 10th or 20th time keeps the quest going, sometimes all the way to the grave.
Bill, why do you drink so much?
It's a war. Everybody parties.
I love you so, and I don't like to nap. It's okay for you to party, but couldn't you just hold back a little bit?
No reason to do that. I'm fine.
Bill was having a good war until he was ordered to ship out across an ocean with German submarines. He got to England, where he lucked out once more. He was assigned to a base near the famous Winchester Cathedral. It was more like being a tourist than a soldier. Bill paid a visit to the cathedral.
I had some sort of spiritual experience looking out from the cliffs at Newport before I shipped out. I was with Lois. We were terrified by my going off to war and perhaps into combat. The sun was just setting. Our gloom was superseded by a growing feeling of duty and patriotism that turned to exultation. Exultation and the joy of sacrifice. I never forgot that experience. It was unbelievably peaceful. Now, far from Newport, I walked inside Winchester Cathedral. I felt within those walls a tremendous sense of presence. I thought of France, of sacrifice, of suffering, of death, of oblivion. Then my mood veered sharply as the atmosphere of the place began to possess me, and I was lifted up into a sort of ecstasy. Somehow a mighty assurance that things were and would be all right. It's much like my experience in Newport, except this time a notion of the supernatural and of God kept crossing my mind. My sense of some sort of sustaining presence in that place was quite overpowering. Of course, that didn't stop me from getting drunk that night.
The war ended and Bill was discharged. Like millions of others, he felt the triumph of victory and a sense of gratitude. But he was also disoriented at the same time. He had no degree, he had no profession, and his future was a terrifying blank. It was the roaring 20s, Warren Harding had won the presidency big by promising a return to normalcy. And after him, President Calvin Coolidge proclaimed the business of America business. Never mind the tens of thousands of Ku Klux Klanners had marched on Washington, and farm foreclosures were at an all-time high. Bill, in fact, had much in common with the iconic figure of the 1920s, J.E. Gatsby. Both were infinitely ambitious outsiders, both determined to be number one. Bill bounced checks, he left unpaid bar bills, he ignored the suffering of his wife. Yet there was enough of his Vermont upbringing, his sense of rectitude, to stop him from becoming overtly criminal. Or he could have become a prohibitionist, a sort of mail-carry nation, smashing the saloons that were now speakeasies, trying to destroy externally his inner demons. But he didn't do that. What did Bill do? He drank. And he joined the Wall Street frenzy.
Never getting close to the slaughter, I adored France, astonished by the French capacity to drink around the clock and never get drunk. We Yanks don't have that knack.
And Bill certainly roared during the 20s, rubbing elbows with the rich and the powerful on roaring Wall Street. They say a rising tide floats all boats, and Wall Street certainly did float Bill's. He soon was, if not one of, at least, pals with the kings of the street. For a time, Bill did very well, though he lost one lucrative opportunity after another by drinking on the job. Bill and Lois are arguing in an opulent apartment.
Look, Bill, we don't need so much space. The expense, it scares me.
We can afford it. We own lots of GE and it keeps going up and up. We're worth a hell of a lot.
Bill, not so long ago, we couldn't even afford a one-room apartment. We would have been on the street if my parents hadn't taken us in.
Don't rain on my parade. I'm in now. The biggest names on the street give me tips and cut me a slice. Have I ever bought a losing stock? No. This apartment is okay, but not quite first rate. When I break down the wall separating ours from the next one and bring the two apartments together, it'll knock the socks off our friends, not to mention my business associates. Lois, I need it to entertain the guys who will take me to the top.
Bill, please don't do this.
You don't know the street the way I do. I'm telling you, stop worrying. We're going to be rich, really rich.
I can never say no to you. Okay, break down the wall.
Let's celebrate.
The Wilsons went through a serious decline. They lost their palatial apartment. Lois went to work as a salesgirl at Macy's, and there were smaller and smaller apartments after that. Then it returned to Lois's family home. There was now more desperation than Bill's drinking. It didn't take much for him to black out night after night. He would stumble home having no idea where he had been or what he had done. Sometimes covered in vomit, his pants urine-soaked. The shakes got worse and worse. For a while there, he got jobs, despite the depression, but they never lasted. His reputation preceded him. Nobody would hire him. Lois had 3 miscarriages, and Bill was too drunk to be supportive or to mourn. Bill was even too drunk to pick up the law degree he had earned at night. Abby Thatcher, Bill's old drinking buddy from Manchester, gave Bill a call.
Ebby, thank God you're in town. Come over right now. We'll have a drink. You have no idea how glad I am to hear from you. I am very lonely. Lois is off at work. Just pace and pace. Come over right away. You're not drinking?
No?
Oh, come on. I was thrilled when you called. I was hoping to be like old times, drinking together, and I wouldn't be so damn lonely. Remember the time we got blitzed, rented a plane, and landed it on the Manchester golf course? They tried to put you in a booby hatch. Damn it, take a drink, at least say something. What the hell has happened to you?
Remember Roland?
Sort of. I met him at a couple of parties. Found God. What's he have to do with us?
Calm down and I'll tell you.
You're not the Ebby I know. What the hell? Tell your story.
Well, Roland was a real heavy hitter.
Yeah.
Well, the booze got the best of him. He just fell apart. But with all that money, he went to the best psychiatrist in the world.
So?
He flew to Zurich and went to treatment with Carl Jung. After apparently very successful treatment, Roland left Jung feeling elated. A few weeks later, he was a falling down drunk.
I'm not interested in Roland's problems. I hardly knew him.
Bill, will you just let me finish my story?
Okay.
Roland went to Zurich for another consultation with Jung, who told him that he was hopeless. He would either die or end his life in an asylum. Roland pleaded with Jung, "Doctor, isn't there some hope for me?" Jung relented, saying, "Well, there is one thing that can save you. A spiritual awakening."
He made a decision for Christ and went to heaven.
Nothing that dramatic. Roland left Zurich dazed and despairing. Somehow he heard about the Oxford movement and started to go to their meetings. I ran across him in New York and listened to his story. Roland told me that since joining the Oxford movement, he lost all desire to drink. As he put it, "I'm not booze fighting anymore. I just have no desire." I was really moved.
Come on. When you talk this way, I feel like I've lost my best friend. I walked out of church when I was 12 and haven't been back since. Couldn't stand the bullshit.
I'll be going now. Can I visit you again?
Yeah. What the hell if you want to?
Bill went to a few meetings of the Oxford group, whose members believed in surrendering one's life over to God's plan. He even took Lois to one. It didn't help. Bill kept going downhill. He had several stays at a pricey, drying out establishment named the Charles B. Towers Hospital in Central Park West. His sister, Dot's physician husband, paid for it. His stays at towns helped for a few months, but then he would pick up a drink and was worse than ever.
Bill, you have to go back to Towns.
Yeah. Whatever you say.
Bill went back to Towns Hospital under the care of its medical director, William Silkworth. Silkworth's theoretical understanding of alcoholism still resonates today. Yet it was his presence, never judging, never writing off even the most regressed of his patients, that gave his influence a spiritual dimension. Bill was bedridden. He went through the agonies of withdrawal.
I don't know what happened to you. I do know you're infinitely better than you were yesterday. I've seen similar transformation in other alcoholics. It's rare, but it does occur.
Doctor, after you left last night, I just couldn't stand it. The chloral hydrate didn't help. My body shook. I thought for sure I was going mad. Then I thought of Ebby and the piece he'd found. I don't believe in that holy roller stuff. Nevertheless, I called out, "If there be a God, let him show himself." Suddenly, my room was blazed with an incredibly white light. I was seized with an ecstasy beyond description. Every joy I have known paled by comparison. Then I saw a mountain. I climbed to its summit where a great wind blew, a wind not of air, but of spirit. It just blew right through me. Then I had a blazing thought. You are a free man. Dr. Silkworth, have I gone over the edge?
Bill, you know you are different. Something has changed.
You're gonna be okay.
Doctor, you never talk about yourself, yet I know you are one who too has known the night. I trust you. Tell me, have I gone mad?
It may seem strange that William James, a Harvard psychology professor, played such a profound role in the life of a besotted stockbroker, but he did.
You're reading Varieties of Religious Experience?
I'm trying. It's difficult.
That's my most important work.
My friend Eddie told me to read it.
You remember what I told you about alcoholism?
Sort of. Alcoholism is a disease.
Cunning, baffling, powerful disease. An allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. It's not the moral failing you think it is. Besides being false, that belief only induces intolerable guilt and shame. And you know what alcoholics do with such painful feelings. Drink, so not to have to feel them. And round we go.
So what is the good doctor talking about? Telling an alcoholic that he has a disease that makes him drink. Hearing that, wouldn't he drink some more? It's a great theory, doctor. But it gives the drinker an excuse to stay drunk, around the clock. What else can he do when he has a disease that makes him drink?
Oh, go away. I've never known an alcoholic who accepted my disease theory and used it as a rationalization. That's an excuse for drinking.
I don't know if I'm crazy. I do know I feel different, transformed, hopeful.
It's important that you know that you are somehow different. Lois sensed it, so did Silkworth. That's all that matters.
In your book, you wrote that the worst kind of melancholia is panic fear. Oh, you are so right. I've lived with it for years.
I too have known panic fear. Being in very low spirits, I couldn't get the thought out of my head that there was nothing stopping me from becoming utterly idiotic, like the patient I had seen in an asylum during my medical studies, sitting on a kind of shelf, staring into nothing. I realized that the discrepancy between us was only momentary. For weeks, tormented by this image, I couldn't stand to be alone.
You too.
Don't judge your experience. I don't. You'll see. If you continue to read my book, that dozens have had similar experiences. Some like you in a blazing moment. A Damascus experience, I call it. Like the one that Paul had on the road to Damascus. For others, it's nothing so dramatic. It's more like an educational experience. This isn't a moment to worry about the trustworthiness of your experience or its meaning. It is yours indelibly. You need not judge it. What's significant about your experience last night isn't determined by its truth value, whatever that may be, but by its cash value. But if epiphanies fade, you will need to convert your Damascus experience into an educational one.
How do I do that?
It will come. We both worship the bitch goddess success. She's a whore. Be wary of her. She's as poisonous as drink.
I can't worry about that now. One failure after another. That's the story of my life. I need some success.
I suppose you do. Let me leave you with a formula. Achievement, divided by ambition, less than one misery, more than one happiness.
The cash value, that which worked for Bill with his own personal spiritual experience at Towns Hospital, can't be calculated. The fact is, Bill never drank again. He read Varieties of Religious Experience over and over again, and he acknowledged often the crucial role that William James' writings played in his recovery and in the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. After his discharge from Towns Hospital, Bill and Lois tried to envision a sober life together.
Lois, I don't have a job. No one will hire me. We're broke. We can't pay the mortgage, even the minimum they agreed to. And I don't give a damn about any of it. I just want to help alcoholics like Eddie and James and Silkworth helped me. We'll get by somehow.
Of course we will. And don't forget, I have a job.
For now. All my time will be dedicated to working with alcoholics. I'll work through the Oxford movement groups like Evie does. Lois, I know I can do it. My failures are behind me. I just need you to support us for a few years, then I'll look for work.
Bill, for as long as you're sober, and I know you will be, you do whatever you need to do. And what a splendid thing to do. Reclaim the dead, the lost, the hopeless. I believe in you. Don't worry, I'll learn enough for us to get by.
Soon Lois's family's mansion was more or less a flophouse. An exhausted Lois returned from work each day and served coffee to men whose reasons for being there were hardly spiritual.
The Oxford people don't know how to talk to drunks. None of the men I bring home are able to maintain sobriety.
The bank is threatening to foreclose.
A Wall Street friend offered me a business opportunity in Akron, Ohio. I'm going to take it. I'll be back in a few weeks. Do I have a decent suit?
I'll make them respectable. Just go and close the deal, and I know you will.
What did I do to deserve you? You're always there for me.
Bill went to Akron, but the deal fell through. For the first time since he had left Towns Hospital, alcohol was talking to him again. Bill paced up and down in front of the hotel bar.
Darling, it didn't work out. I came all this distance for nothing. I'm going into a deep hole like the one I was in when we first met. No, I won't drink. Damn, I can't get out of this alone. I need another alcoholic to talk to. I'll look in the church directory here in the lobby and ask for help. Don't worry, I'll find another alcoholic to talk to. I love you. Goodbye. Please don't think I'm crazy. I'm alcoholic, not drinking at the moment, and alone in Akron. I need another alcoholic to talk to. Yes, that's right. Who? Dr. Bob Smith? You'll send someone to the hotel to take me to his home? I can't thank you enough.
Bill not only talked to Dr. Bob, he moved in and stayed for days. Neither man has ever revealed what they spoke of. They must have bared their souls, telling drinking stories and Bill talking of his recovery. Bill and Dr. Bob finally emerged from Dr. Bob's home. Dr. Bob has a scalpel in his hand and is shaking with him.
I'm needed at the hospital. I'm scheduled for surgery to do a hemorrhoidectomy.
Listen, here's a drink. Drink it. It'll stop the shakes.
Several years later, Bill and Bob are engaged in conversation.
That beer was my last drink. Unlike you, Bill, I've never lost a desire. It's not constant. It doesn't torment me every day, and even when it does, I don't give into it. No burst of white light for me. I didn't need it. I always believed in God. The problem was that He didn't believe in me until you told me your story. Your story was my white light. It opened the door, and I walked through it, pouring out all of my guilt and shame. You, Bill, play three-dimensional chess, not me. I'm a simple man, and want to remain one. Every day I stay in the hospital when my work is done and talk to the men in the detox unit there. No preaching, I just tell them my story. You'd be surprised I'm going to get and stay sober after hearing me talk. I do edit a little, emphasize how much better my life is, leaving out the residual cravings.
Like all foundation myths, this one isn't quite true. Evie never managed to stay sober long, and Bill rescued him time and time again. Roland from the Oxford group, although more rational, also had many slips, some triggered by the deaths of his two sons during World War II. In fact, Roland left the Oxford group, and he never joined AA, and he returned to the Episcopal Church. Regardless of the controversies surrounding the work of Carl Jung, Jung played an undeniably important role in the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. The AA program needed Bill Wilson, the Wall Street operator, and Bob Smith, the straightforward physician. Together they developed the AA program as we know it. Progress was slow in the beginning, but steady. More and more groups sprang up, and a significant percentage of the members of the groups stayed sober. Bill wrote what many consider a masterpiece, Alcoholics Anonymous, known as the Big Book. It didn't sell initially, but things exploded when the Saturday Evening Post ran a feature story on the program. Bill and Lois never had to worry about money again. The Big Book has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and it's been translated into 70 languages. After that, Bill wrote 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, a sort of constitution for AA. His friend, the writer Aldous Huxley, considered it the best piece of social engineering of the 20th century.
Eventually, I had to leave the Oxford movement. They never had much success with drunks. I was determined that our approach wouldn't make the same mistakes. The Oxford movement tells people what to do. Alcoholics can't accept that. AA has only suggestions. Oxford preaches. We share. Oxford is into absolutes, absolute purity, absolute this, absolute that, absolute honesty, and so forth. Our slogan is progress, not perfection. Oxford emphasizes converting the leading men in a community. We're radically democratic. Oxford is hierarchical. We are egalitarian. Oxford advertises their membership, especially their stars. We need no stars to recruit members. We're a program of attraction. I took the best of the Oxford movement and either left behind or made alterations to the rest. For me, the straw that broke the camel's back as far as the Oxford movement was concerned was when their leaders, under their head, Frank Buckman, we have no leaders. Our leaders are but servants. But when Frank Buckman decided to recruit Hitler and other Nazi leaders, Buckman even said Hitler was maximum, Oxford's highest praise. After that, I wanted nothing to do with the Oxford.
Bill, that sounds like you at your best. But that's not the whole story. You were constitutionally incapable of being a follower of Buckman or anyone else. You had to be number one. You always had to be number one, all your life.
There is much truth in what you say, but you know I detest being the leader of AA.
You love it.
I just want to be a member, like any other member. I don't want to lead. I want to belong.
That's not true.
I've never belonged, not even to AA.
Not true.
Damn you.
The Oxford group mandated belief in a patriarchal, transcendent God. AA believes in God as you understand him. Anything that helps you escape from the prison of your own self. It could be the creative forces of the universe, something personal, something supportive, something pantheistic, or something transcendent. It doesn't matter, as long as it's a force outside of yourself. There is no religious dogma in AA.
Lois, Yale is offering me an honorary doctorate.
How wonderful!
I'm going to turn it down.
Why? You earned it.
I want that Yale degree so badly I can taste it. It's not like the offer to be on the cover of Time magazine. That would have made me famous for a week and then instantly forgotten. I gained far more refusing to be on the cover. People won't forget that. It wasn't something I cared about. I care about a Yale degree, but I can't accept it. To do so would set a horrible example, breaking anonymity for personal gain.
You know, I think you're wrong. But it doesn't matter what I think. You're going to do whatever you want anyway.
You know, maybe I can turn my refusal into something positive, like I did in the early days when I thought Rockefeller would bankroll a chain of treatment facilities and he turned me down.
And I remember you were crushed.
I got over my disappointment and made being self-supporting through our own contributions and never becoming professional keystones of the program. Rockefeller did me a huge favor. Maybe this will turn out the same way. Damn, I want that degree. I always had conflicted feelings toward wealth, resenting the Manchester summer people even as I aspired to be one of them.
But I'm so glad you didn't get that Rockefeller money. You would have ended up running a string of treatment centers. But you do have some very wealthy friends.
Bill was someone now. He had the sort of success he had striven for all his life. He was definitely now number one. He finally had what he wanted. Yet maybe not. He sank into the worst depression of his life. Bill fell from the heights of success, from finally becoming beyond question number one. He was pulled down into the utter darkness of a major depression. What caused that? We can only speculate. Was he among those who were destroyed by their own success? By the growing suspicion that they don't deserve that success? Did Bill experience the devastating realization that no amount of success, however spectacular, could ever fill the gaping hole, the utter emptiness he had spent a lifetime trying to fill? Were his expectations so grandiose that nothing in reality could ever have met them? Was it self-punishment for the sins, real or imagined, that he had committed? Was it anger at all those who had rejected and excluded him, starting with his parents, and turned against his own self? Could have been any one of those, but it also could have been the realization that he could never be a member of the very organization that he had created, that welcomed everyone else, that he would end as he began, utterly alone. This would be a crushing blow.
Bill, you can hardly move, and nothing seems to get through to you. You can't go on like this. You can't get out of bed in the morning, and when you do manage to go to the office, you just sit there and stare into space, staring down with your head on the desk. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do to help you.
You're spying on me?
I get calls from the office.
I wasn't as bad as when we lost your father's house and we were homeless, sleeping in the AA clubhouse on 23rd Street.
Oh, Bill, please call Henri Thibault. He specializes in alcoholics.
Why not Silkworth?
I don't think Silkworth has a private practice.
Don't nag. I can't stand it. The leader of the program can't call a shrink. It would really hurt our cause. Who wants to join a movement whose leader is so crazy he needs a psychiatrist?
Bill, that's just an excuse. Nobody needs to know.
I'll call.
Oh, thank God. Okay, Bill. I don't like to get between you and your program, and I don't mean the organization. I mean your personal relationship with it. But I'm going to. Bill, you have not been to an AA meeting in ages. Please go back.
Lois, quit while you're ahead. All right? I have an appointment with Thibault. You're so naive. What do you think happens when I walk into a meeting? Everyone gawks. Do you know who just walked in? Bill W. Some of them point and then some idiot says, maybe he'll take a picture with me. No useful work is going to be done at that meeting, and it sure as hell won't help me.
I know it's hard. Fame is a mixed blessing. You wrote your last piece in the Grapevine. We can and should learn from every single person we meet. But you stopped doing that. Now you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. And that infuriates me. If you had been going to meetings, you would have heard the last 12-step slogan. Only two people can get me in trouble. The great I and the poor me. You might think about that.
I won't have my wife preaching to me. When you're right, you're right. I'm going to get everything I possibly can from my sessions with Thibault.
I knew you'd do the right thing.
Dr. Thibault, the first psychiatrist to recognize the work of AA, unfortunately had the therapeutic tact of a bull in a china shop. Thibault thought alcoholics, including Bill, suffered from something called infantile grandiosity. Let me explain. The conviction that every whim of His Majesty the baby must be gratified. What was needed then, according to Thibault, was ego deflation. Again, let me explain. Kicking His Majesty the baby off the throne. Thibault's style of ego deflation was punitive, and it was judgmental. Indeed, Bill had struggled with the sense of grandiosity his whole life. And in this case, Thibault echoed what we heard earlier about from William James, the ratio of ambition to achievement. But even if Dr. Thibault was onto something, it didn't do Bill any good. It failed to alleviate his depression. Bill stayed with him for quite a while, but then found another shrink, and the other shrink didn't help either.
Bill, I have some bad news. Dr. Bob is gone.
I would have never gotten out of that Baffling hotel sober if not for him. There would have been no Alcoholics Anonymous without him. He was a good man in a way I could never be. A friend, always there. Even while cancer was killing him, he was always there to put brakes on when I spun out of control.
Some years later, as Bill returned from the rustic studio he had built on the hill behind his house, he was embraced by Lois.
I'm so proud of you.
You're always proud of me.
Yes, but the way you reworded the Oxford Movement steps to recovery, making them livable, actually doable, it's just marvelous.
The first two are the key. Admitting that you are powerless when it comes to alcohol, surrendering, and then coming to believe a power, however you conceive it, can restore your sanity. First, surrender, and then hope. People don't understand admitting powerlessness. They think it's humiliating. That makes me angry. It's a paradox. Admitting powerlessness empowers.
How many steps will you have?
I don't know.
What are you working on now?
This one, about promptly admitting it when you're wrong.
You must have my father in mind.
Your father? You never had a drinking problem.
No, but he never ever admitted being wrong about anything. You know, and he's not easy to live with.
I never had a problem with him. Of course, he's not my dad. I'm really attracted to your father's Swedenborgian beliefs. The blend of humanism and mysticism really talks to me.
Yeah, your hero William James's father was also a Swedenborgian. What a strange coincidence.
No coincidence. Swedenborg is all over the pages of varieties of religious experience.
Yeah, but we never joined that Swedenborgian church or any other than that.
I am suspicious of organized religions.
This also recalls your boyhood experience of having competitors, but never friends. You were never going to join a church, it just would have been competition. Bill's fame continued to grow, as did AA, and so did the burden of leading it. Later in life, Bill wrote to Carl Jung, telling him about Roland and his interactions with Evie Thatcher. He wrote that Jung's ideas had played a role, albeit indirectly, in the establishment of Alcoholics Anonymous. Jung wrote back a letter in which he punned in Latin. And alcohol in Latin is spiritus. We use the word spirit for the highest religious experience as well as for the most depraving poison. The helpful formula, therefore, according to Jung, was spiritus contra spiritum, the spirit against alcohol. Bill treasured that letter. It still hangs framed in AA headquarters.
I'm going to resign from the management of the program. I will turn it over to the group consciousness of our entire fellowship. I want it to be the most democratic, least hierarchical organization in history.
Great dream, Bill, as well as a wise decision. You designed the structure, now it's time to let the fellowship see it through. And the fellowship will be saved, even from you.
The rest of Bill's life became one endless experiment. Just as James' varieties of religious experience had profoundly moved Bill, so did Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception.
There is nothing like it. LSD takes me places I've never been, not even when I saw the white light of towns. It may be a chemical cure for addiction.
I tried it, didn't do anything for me.
My depression lifted after my first trip. Now there's a whole reaction claiming it's a dangerous, addictive drug, and there's enormous pressure to outlaw it. The law's going after its promoters. There's so much vitriol directed at me for my promoting it as a chemical path to spiritual experience for AA members. Lois, it is the only thing that lifted my depression.
You've always had critics. Ignore them. Anything that helps you, I'm for.
If my use of LSD hurts the program, and it looks like it will, I have to stop.
Don't.
But Bill gave up LSD and found another panacea.
I found the answer. It's niacin. It's a vitamin, not a drug. It may be the answer to the mystery of how Silkworth's allergy actually works. It looks like it's going to turn out that alcoholics suffer from a vitamin deficiency.
Always the salesman, Bill relentlessly promoted niacin to anybody who would listen, and plenty of people who didn't want to listen.
Niacin will change your life.
Bill had been chain smoking his entire life. He was diagnosed with emphysema, and even as his emphysema worsened, he continued to sneak cigarettes between puffs of his oxygen. Niacin didn't help.
Darling, you can barely get across the room. You have to go back to the hospital.
Call an ambulance.
Lois enters the hospital room where Bill is dying. He is under the care of a male nurse.
Give me a drink. Damn, just one shot of whiskey.
I can't do that.
I've been called an enabler, or worse, by people I don't even know, whom I've never even met. They condemn me for that on public platforms and in print. They say I'm a horrible example for wives living with drums. Maybe I am. I don't know what's best for other women. All I know is I love Bill, and I never seriously thought of leaving him. They tell me he would have had a better chance to hit bottom if I had left him. I don't believe it. I'm convinced he would have died if I had. He had so deteriorated that I didn't recognize the man I married.
Just a shot.
I'm bound by a sacred oath, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness or in health, until death do us part. Oh, I did leave and go back to my parents' house many times, never for long. Bill would plead, and to tell the truth, I wanted to go back. Bill's recovery had nothing to do with anything I did or didn't do. He had a spiritual awakening, and that's what transformed him.
Just one drink, please.
Even after he was stably sober, it wasn't easy for me to live in his shadow. He was so big in every sense of the word. And just as I had had moments of fury and resentment when he was drinking, I did during his years of recovery. At one point, when he was consumed by the movement he had started, I threw a shoe at him, shouting, "You and your damn meetings!" And I started Al-Anon to help myself and others shift their focus from the alcoholic to their own growth. Yet, for all pain, there was so much we shared, and so much I would have missed out on if Bill had survived my leaving him and recovered without me. Our adventures, our love of nature, our skinny dipping in mountain streams, our sharing the heartbreak of my multiple miscarriages. listening to Bill tell a story as only he can. Our quiet nights around the fire, or playing Beethoven duets, me on the piano, Bill on the cello. Our experiments with the Ouija board and a belief in the occult. Our sailing on the Hudson with a makeshift sail that had once been a towel. Our world travels, our virtual homelessness until we acquired, with the assistance of an AA member, our beloved home. And for me, the chance to play a role, however ancillary, in creating a movement that changes lives.
Oh, for God's sake, give me a drink.
Bill was always attracted to beautiful women, and they to them. By then I was an old white-haired woman, and he was still a handsome, virile man. What was I to do? I knew it was ego and sensual pleasure, not love, that led him to do what he did. And I knew that he would never leave me. My friends told me to throw him out, but I didn't. I didn't want to. Bill's relationship with Helen Wynne, editor of the AA Grapevine, was different. After she bought a house near ours, it became a kind of ménage à trois. Bill spent many nights there, leaving me alone. That was cruel. That was the one time I seriously did consider divorce. But in the end, I accepted that too. Bill insisted on leaving Helen 10% of the royalties from Alcoholics Anonymous, arguing that I would have plenty of money while Helen had none. I was deeply hurt. I argued with Bill to no avail, and I wound up accepting that too.
One drink. You bastard. It's Lois. She won't let me do a fucking thing.
I'm not saying that being married to sober Bill was easy. Far into his recovery, he did things that hurt me deeply. But somehow, they don't seem very important right now. Drunk or sober, Bill was a difficult mate and an utterly marvelous one. Bill wrote in his autobiography that there was something unhealthy in his relationship with women, meaning mostly with me, that they had much of a little boy looking for a mother to protect and soothe. I didn't, and I don't like that he wrote that. And even if it's true, it doesn't matter. I just plain don't care. We had so much that was mutual, rich, and sustaining that I was perfectly content to pick him up when he stumbled.
A shot or two of whiskey.
I'm afraid not.
Alcoholism. Cunning, baffling, powerful.
Please, please, give me a whiskey.
I can't.
Alcoholism. Cunning, baffling, powerful.
He's gone.
The founder of Alcoholics Anonymous' dying words, give me a drink. It's beyond dying. How could we understand it? Was it the rantings of an oxygen-deprived brain without emotional meaning? Did alcoholism's cunning, baffling, and powerful reassert itself? Was it a return of everything that he had repressed? Was it the revenge of a bitch goddess success? Was it a self-destructive impulse that couldn't be denied? Or was it just a reflexive response to excruciating pain? The most abusive of self-punishments, which obliterated his entire life's work. Dr. Ball would have said, keep it simple. Any member of Alcoholics Anonymous would tell you it was the result of Bill having stopped going to meetings. But of course, we'll never know. But how do we understand this chain smoking right up to the end? Was there an untreated transfer of addictions? Was it the sheer addictive power of nicotine? Could chain smoking itself have been a misguided attempt to suck in all the emotional nutrition that he never got from his mother? Again, not for us to know. The thousands of mourners who fill St. John's Cathedral in New York, the National Cathedral in Washington, and St. Martin in the Fields in London knew little or nothing about Bill's lifelong struggle with his demons, shame, guilt, and depression. Nor did they care. But they did know that Bill W. drew inspiration from the Vermonters who fought and died for freedom at Fort Ticonderoga in the Battle of Gettysburg, from the radically egalitarian ethos of democracy and self-governance of the New England Town Meeting, from the wisdom of William James, who taught Bill not to judge spiritual experiences, but to accept what a spiritual experience meant to each individual, who taught that spiritual epiphanies, like Paul's on the road to Damascus, fade, but they must be sustained by a structure and a practice. Bill wove all of that into a tapestry of rare beauty and utility, something quintessentially American and universal. What was important to those who mourned him was that he created a program that provided a path to recovery from addiction, not only from addiction, but also from the curse of guilt and shame. More than anything else, for the thousands who attended Bill's many memorials, the overwhelming feeling was of gratitude. Of course, Bill would have been uncomfortable with all of that, though secretly enjoying it. We can only hope that in the end, Bill W. got what he had always longed for, but could not quite get, to be seen as just another struggling drunk.
That's always good when something's in process and you want to see how it's going to grow and change. This has come so far from when you first brought this to my attention, and I thank you for letting me be part of this, and just the whole experience has been wonderful.
For all of us.